Hello everyone, my name is Rishita and I am a former IGCSE student who's written their IGCSE examinations in the Feb-March 2026 series. So in this video, we are going to be covering some tips and tricks on the IGCSE Economics 0455 subject, and I'll be giving you basic tips on how to study the subject as well as some tricks on how you can ace your papers while you're sitting there in the examination room. Now, first of all, let's know the basics of the syllabus. You just need to know mainly what are the assessment objectives, because they are very important when you're answering the paper 2 especially. So here you have AO1, which assesses your knowledge and conceptual textbook knowledge, basically all the facts that you're learning throughout the syllabus. And then AO2 sees how you're forming chain analysis and proper chains of reasoning in your long answers or in your thinking process. And then AO3 is evaluation, which checks how you're able to weigh out two sides of an argument. So usually in paper 1, AO1 and AO2 are assessed, and in paper 2, all three assessment objectives are assessed. Now, coming to the weighing factors, I suppose you know what weighing factors are. It's basically whatever marks you get. Let's say you get 25 out of 30 in the MCQ paper. That mark gets multiplied into a weighing factor. That means one mark is in the MCQ paper is worth 1.5 marks. And in paper 2, one mark is worth 1.16667 marks. So once it's multiplied, the mark that you get is compared to the thresholds, and that's how your grade is determined. And here the thresholds are usually high, which is around 125 126 out of 150, which is usually comparatively higher compared to other subjects, but we can still do this. Now, coming to how you can study the subject, there are some methods I've used, and there are many others too, but this is something that has aligned with me, and I believe it can align with many people of my generation. First of all, for economics, you need to have a proper conceptual foundation, because you have to have a strong base to be able to build on top. So if you have a lot of good conceptual understanding, that means that you're ready for the papers. But first of all, get a strong base. And after that, this is something that I really like, because it really helped me in my papers. While taking notes, don't just copy the textbook. Instead, understand what's going on, process the data, and then write it in a form that you find visually appealing or visually attracting, so that you feel like reading your notes, or something that can stimulate your visual memory. So what I like to do is write flowcharts and mind maps, because flowcharts help me with chain analysis and mind maps help me grasp points for the discuss questions that we have later on in paper 2. And then I would say don't read the textbook continuously before every exam. Once you've read it, that's enough. Don't read it multiple times. Just read it thoroughly once, and that's enough, because the textbook knowledge is not going to get you anywhere beyond your paper 1 marks, because paper 2 mostly depends on how you're able to connect different chapters across the syllabus, how you're able to connect different concepts and apply it to real world. So that brings me to my next point, which is applying the concepts into real life and thinking practically. Now, coming to the last but definitely not the least point, and one of the most powerful points here, which is past paper practice. Because the more you practice, the more you understand patterns, and you're able to answer properly, manage your time, and yeah. So when I read textbooks, the textbooks that I have used are the Collins textbook and the CUP textbook. Usually our school has provided the CUP textbook, but I've seen an online copy of the Collins textbook as well. Basically, the Collins textbook is straight to the point if you want some revision right before the exam. And COPI helps you understand concepts if they're a bit difficult. And COP can also help you in being able to write answers because it's mostly paragraphs instead of just bullets or tables. And yeah. Now coming to exam tips, I'm going to be giving them separately for each paper. Now paper 1 is pretty simple, it's very easy. You can easily score 30 on 30 if you avoid common traps or silly mistakes. And I know under time pressure you miss out on the silliest, dumbest mistakes. I've been there, but just practice a lot under time pressure and you'll understand your common mistakes, common traps that occur, and you'll be able to avoid them. And the time management that I followed is basically 1 minute per question. Read the question once properly and then try to answer. If the answer doesn't come right away to you, skip the question and move on to the next. And then leave the next 15 minutes for you to fill in the OMR as well as look out for questions that you've left. What I usually do is mark a star next to questions that I've left so that I don't, like while filling the OMR, I don't realize that it's, oh, I left this question. It should be something that you remember and look back to. Now here's a very big common trap. Many of my friends as well as myself have actually fallen for this trap. It's basically graph questions. They give you a graph on economic growth rate or inflation rate. Now the thing all students miss here is the word rate. Rate is different and just growth or inflation is different. Because here, if the rate decreases, it doesn't mean that economic growth is decreasing. Now imagine a value increases, let's say 100 million, increases by 10%. It becomes 110 million. Now it increases by just only 1%. What does this mean? It doesn't mean that the value is decreased, does it? It's still increasing, but by a lower percentage. Now here on the graph, it would show a downfall. However, it still means that economic growth is occurring. Now that's something you really have to keep in mind. But when it's going below zero, that's when it means that it's falling below or the economic growth is decreasing. So what you need to do in the paper is look at the axis properly and underline the command term that they're asking in the question, and based on that analyze and think about it. The thing is, this kind of mistakes can be avoided if you do a lot of practice, because that's when you understand what the common traps are in this paper. Paper 1 is, other than that, pretty straightforward. It's paper 2 that many people struggle on because time management is completely difficult, and questions as well, the marking is very strict. Like they mark very strictly your long answers. So yeah, basically paper 2 has two sections, section A and section B. Section A, I would say, first of all, look at all the marks that each question is awarding and based on that answer. Because if you write a whole paragraph for just a 2-marker question, it's useless. It saves so much time if you actually check the marks and then answer based on that. Other than that, I would say, since they're giving such a huge source material, once read the questions, and from the questions try to find out points. Let's say this, say state 2 primary products, primary sector products that the country produces. So once you read that question, search for the answer in the source file, source material. So there's a lot of information in the source material. Till like almost all of the questions can be answered through the source material. So try searching it properly. Make use of the information they've provided. Now section B, I would say section B is a bit more tougher. However, if you get the hang of it, you can do it. Here the source material does not really help a lot, but read it once for contextual understanding. And I will be giving you formats for each question on how you can answer each part. Now 4-part means there's always identify or define for 2 marks, then explain, then analyze, then discuss. It's always the same pattern. So I'll be giving you some formats what you can directly just blindly copy and you'll be able to answer. Now coming to the time management, since the paper is 2 hours and 15 minutes, what I have followed is for the case study, do not give it more time than 45 to 50 minutes. If you exceed 50 minutes, leave it there because it's not going to help you answer the next 4-part questions. And in the 4-part questions, answer 3 questions out of 4. Don't try to be too smart and write 4 because they're not going to read all 4 of them. They're going to only read the first 3. So your 4th one is going to go useless. Instead, spend more time on only 3 answers or 3 questions which seem easier to you. And while you're answering, spend about I would say spend about 25 to 30 minutes on each part, not more than that. Keep a limit from 20 to 30 minutes, not more than that, because it's going to risk the amount of time you have for your next question. Trust me, I've experienced it because I used to give more time for the first few questions and then I ended up writing the last 4-part question in the last 5 minutes. So I hope you're not going to be in the same situation. But in the actual board exam, because of a lot of practice, I've been able to leave 15 to 20 minutes after writing the exam for rechecking. So practice is very important in this case. So let's come to the golden formats that I've developed based on a lot of past paper practice and patterns that they usually expect. This is also something my teacher has suggested to me, so it's not just me making things up. So yeah, first of all, in the section A, you always get this 5-marker question which asks you identify the relationship between, or analyze, not identify, analyze. Usually, like they say, analyze the relationship between the GDP growth rate and the population growth rate. What you need to do is just 5 points. 5 points, follow them blindly, you get all 5 marks. So the first one is state the relationship. Let's say it's positive, negative, say that. After that, give 1 or 2 evidences. It's safe to give 2 because usually in marking schemes they award 2 marks for evidences. Just say this country has the highest this and the highest this, and then in brackets give the actual value if it's provided, and always say highest or lowest, second highest, second lowest. Use these terms. It's actually really helpful. And then try to find out what's the reason or possible reason for the relationship. Give 1 or 2 sentences, not more than that. And there's always an exception, so take that exception with evidence, comparative evidence, and then give a reason for that exception. That's enough. You're done with the question. It's very easy. You'll be able to do it. Now next one is the analyze question. Usually it's for 6 marks in section B. In section A it varies, but yeah, in section B, however, it's 6 marks. So try to include fully developed, clear and concise chains. Now by concise, I do not mean compressed. Concise means that you're avoiding all the extra blabber, extra elaboration, and compressed means you're missing out steps. So here's where the flowcharts come in. Since if you draw flowcharts in your notes, it's very helpful for you to just easily jot down points. Let's say the question is, how does the rate of increase in the rate of interest affect aggregate demand? Analyze, let's say. Now in this, it's pretty simple. If you know the flowcharts, you have to state a point, give a chain analysis, the result. State a point, give a chain analysis, result, and if you have time, add a 3rd point. That's enough. Now here, I would say for the rate of interest, let's say, if rate of interest increases, this is the answer that I would write. If rate of interest increases, then the reward for saving increases. Because of this, people would save more and consumer spending would fall. As consumer spending is part of aggregate demand would also fall. That's it. Now you can say the second point, which could be, as rate of interest increases, the cost of borrowing increases. Due to this, borrowing decreases as well as investment decreases. Due to less borrowing, consumer spending decreases. Now, consumer spending and investment are both part of aggregate demand, so aggregate demand decreases. That's it. If you give these points, you have all 6 marks secured. The only thing is you have to use a lot of economic terminology. As you have heard me say, include a lot of economic terminology. That's very important in all of your answers. Now the big 8 marker discuss question. I know we all must have struggled with this question because it was very tough in the beginning, because they expect so much from you that you need to cover most points. But I've developed a format that you can blindly follow and you'll be able to get most of the marks. Getting 8 on 8 is very rare in this case, but it's going to be possible if you follow the format properly and clearly. So again, you have to make proper chains the same way. You need to know how to make chains and keep both sides equally weighed. And by weight, I don't mean quantity. It doesn't mean this paragraph has to be the same length as that paragraph. Both paragraphs or both sides need to be equal in strength, and use a lot of economic terminology, as well as add a conclusion all the time. So the format basically is, first define any key term in the question if it's mentioned in the question. Let's say fiscal policy or monetary policy. These terms are very important, so you can define them in one line. You can say fiscal policy is a policy by the government which is used to influence aggregate demand. That's enough. And then you can say 2 to 3 strong points on each side with chain analysis, proper, clear, concise chains with economic terms completely sprinkled over your answer. And then there's a very important thing that you need to include, which is the conclusion. In the conclusion, it's important you need to weigh both sides. This is where your AO3 comes, evaluation. So here you weigh both sides and tell which one is better. So in this case, you can say this side is better than that side, and you can tell reasons. I've made a format for conclusion too, because I used to struggle a lot with the proper conclusion. So I've made a format for that too. Here you can see that. So this is just placeholders. You can just put things here. Let's say overall side A is likely to benefit the economy in the long run. Long run is an important term here, because you have to tell the time period. Because, and then you give a reason, and then you have to explain uncertainties too. If you see in marking schemes, they also say uncertainties of a policy. So the same way, you need to tell the term it depends on. So it depends on, and then mention one thing that relates, like magnitude of policy, elasticity of demand or supply, inflation rate, size of economy, economic growth rate. You have so many things that you can mention, but make it a strong point and make it something that aligns in the context. So these itself can get you 1 to 2 marks. So ensure that this conclusion is very strong, short, and it makes sense. That's very important. Now coming to the next one, which is they usually ask 4-mark questions on graphs where you need to draw a graph. Now I've lost many marks in these. My first exam, internal exam in the school, in that I've lost all marks in all graph questions because I drew them wrong. So this is something that I've learned throughout my IGCSE journey. So first of all, draw lines clearly with clear labels, and always draw a 0 next to the ending. It's very important. Write a 0 in the beginning of 2 axes. And then after that, know the difference between aggregate supply and aggregate demand. as well as the normal demand and supply curve, because in aggregate supply, as you can see in the top graph, it's not a straight line. Other than that, know what's the difference between a shift and a movement, why does each one occur, as well as use terms. If it's a 6-mark analyze and they ask you to draw a graph, in that case you give a description next to it mentioning about equilibrium and all of these market forces. Use economic terms while explaining it. Plus, very important is the PPC graph. It's very important for you to know the difference between a movement of a point towards the PPC and a normal shift in the PPC. A movement occurs when people are, or the economy is employing unemployed resources. That means it's making use of the resources that it already had. Whereas if it's a shift outwards or inwards, it basically means there's a change in the quality or the quantity of the factors of production. Let's say for quantity, you can say more people enter the labor force or technological advancement. And when they say quality, then you can say maybe higher productivity. All of these can cause an outward shift, and natural disasters and such things can cause an inward shift. So that's all you need to know about graphs. And one thing I would suggest for you is that use YouTube channels like Mr. Lee. I really liked his videos for explaining how to answer, comparing with candidate responses. Obviously, the formats are not the exact same ones I provided, but he explores different candidate responses. And he also does videos on business studies. I haven't chosen that subject. However, if you'd like, then you can also watch some videos on that. And yeah, also, we are in a generation to learn with AI. We have AI, use it. Use any kind of AI. I use ChatGPT, but these AI chats can be really helpful for you, especially because your teacher isn't always available for you to mark every single answer. So you need someone that's available every moment, knows the examination style of marking, and gives the strictest amount of marks for your responses. This is a way you can practice your past papers without bothering your teacher every single moment. And you can be done with many papers at the same time. So what I did for my past paper practice is that I maintained a book only for economics, and I answered like past papers, many past papers. Once I'm done with the timed practice, once I'm done, what I did was I took a picture and I uploaded it onto ChatGPT. And one thing I would suggest for you is, before you start just uploading the pictures, give it clear instructions on how it should treat your paper. You can say IGCSE 0455 research on its examiner style marking and the paper pattern and syllabus. Ask it to research on it. Once it has the proper information, then ask it to mark it like a strict examiner and upload the image. This would be much more helpful than just directly diving in, but it depends on how you would like to ask it. And ask it for feedback, ask it how you can improve your answer, because you have resources, use them like that. Now that's all for this video. And here's a quote that I really love, which is, believe you can and you're halfway there. This means that if you are confident enough, then you can do it. So be confident while you're practicing. Even if you lose marks initially, that's fine, because even I didn't start out being an A star or A candidate. I used to have grades going till B or lower maybe, because everyone doesn't start out the same way, and economics must be a new subject for everyone, not just me, but I think most students here. It must be a new subject for you, introduced only through IGCSE. So I would say take it lightly, like not lightly in the sense not serious, but if you lose any marks or get a lower grade, Let that only push you forward but not pull you back. And that's it for this video. I really hope that this video helped, and my tips and tricks have aided your IGCSE journey. And yeah, wishing you all the best for your IGCSE journey, and hoping I'll see so many A stars from you. And other than that, I'm going to be uploading different subject videos as well. So this is an ACID series that I'm uploading. I'll be uploading videos on other subjects like sciences, chemistry, physics, biology, math, and other subjects too. So you can go and explore that series and watch with them. So thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate you giving your time for my videos. Thank you.